We continue now at the top of Daf Samech Dalet Amud Aleph Meseches Nazir. This is Nazir Daf 64a. And the previous Amud, the Gemara was discussing if you have a suffix tumah of sheretz that's floating in water. What that means to say is the sheretz is floating in water, and it's a suffix whether the individual touched that sheretz or not. So the Tanna Kama said in those situations tahor, and Rabbi Shimon he made a distinction. He said if it's in kalim, if it's floating in kalim, then tameh. If it's floating in water that's in the karka, that's in the earth, so then it's going to be tahor. And the Gemara now explains my time in the Tanna Kama. What's the reason of the Tanna Kama that he always says tahor? Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avudimi Ksiv. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avudimi says that the pasuk says b'chol hasheretz hashoretz kol makom shu shoretz. It says b'chol hasheretz sounds like anywhere where one finds a sheretz, where one finds a creeping creature. Uchsiv al haaretz, but it also says in the pasuk on the earth. Haketzat how so? Vadai mago tami. What it means to say is that if you certainly touch it, if there's no suffix, so then anywhere you touch it, whether it's on the earth or floating in water, it's going to be tameh. However, suffix mago, if there's a doubt whether it was touched or not, and it's floating in the water, so according to the Tanna Kama, it's going to be tar. It is going to be pure. For Rabbi Shimon, my time, and according to Rabbi Shimon, what's his reason to make a distinction between water that's in kalim and water that's in karka? Amar Ula says ksiv, because the pasuk says ach mayon. It talks about mayon, meaning to say if you have this water that's part of a well, so then we say that is tahor. Uchsiv yitma, but the pasuk on the other hand also says tameh. Haketzat how so? We make the following distinction: safa bekalim tameh. If it's floating in water in a vessel, then it's tameh. But bekarka, but if it's in water that's in the earth, that's from ach mayon. So then tahor, then we're going to say it is pure. And the Rosh explains haketzat how so within the shita of the Tanna Kama vaday naga b'chol makam tami. If it's certain that he touched the tumah, so then it doesn't matter where it is. Aval safik naga, but if it's a doubt if he touched the tumah, al hamayim tar. So according to the Tanna Kama, if it's floating in water, it is tahor. And then Rabbi Shimon makes a distinction. Ksiv ach mayon ubor talks about a spring and a pit. Mikvei mayim, a gathering of water. Yetar, it's pure. Demashman ogeh b'sheretz shal pnei me mayon ubor mikvatar. That sounds like if the sheretz is floating in this water from the spring or in the pit, then it's going to be tar. But then it says if you touch it tameh. The mashma v'chol makom sounds like it's totally tameh. And again, Rabbi Shimon therefore makes a distinction between water in a vessel and water that is in the ground. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanon, the rabbis taught, Kol hanitolin v'hanigrorin, anything that is carried or being dragged. So sveikon tameh. So in that situation, if you have a suffix, if you touch that item, the individual is tameh mipnei shein kimunachin. That's considered like it is at rest. It's not considered like it's floating on water. Again, as we said above, if you have this tumah, let's say tumas sheretz, that is floating on water, and you have a suffix, if you touched it, so we would say tahor. That is not true if it's being carried or dragged. However, v'hanizrakin, but let's say it's being thrown, so then sveikon tar. So in that situation, if there's a suffix maga, a suffix whether it was touched, so then we say it is the same as if it's floating on water, and we say tar, we say the individual is pure. And the Gemara continues, Chutzmin kizayis hames. The exception over here is, let's say you have a kizayis of a corpse, v'hamahil al pnei tumah, or a situation of tumas ohel by tumah, v'chol davar shemetami milmala kilamata, and any type of tumah which can cause tumah above it or below it without touching. The point over here is this leniency that floating on water, we say suffix is going to be pure, is specifically by tumas maga. But in cases where you have tumas ohel, or any situation where there's tumah that can be, the person can be rendered tameh without touching it, leisuye zav zav. For example, to include a zav and zava, the zav and zava are able to impart tumah above and below them even without direct contact. So in all of those situations, we are going to be machmir even in situations where the tumah is being thrown or floating, etc. And the Gemara continues, Boy Rami Bar Chama asks the following question. Meis Bekli, let's say the corpse is in a vessel, so in that sense it is at rest. However, Ukli Tzaf al Pnei Hamayim, but the vessel itself is floating on water. So is that considered at rest or not? Mahu, what's the halacha? Basar Kli Azlinan, do we follow the Kli? Or Basar Meis Azlinan, or do we follow the corpse? And the Gemara continues, Im Tim Salomar Basar Kli Azlinan. Now if you're going to say that we follow the Kli, and therefore in that situation the Kli itself is moving, so Meis al Gabe Sheretz Mao, so what happens if the mace is on top of a sheretz? Kevan the high tumas erev, high tumas shiva. On the one hand, we could say, since the sheretz is only a tumas erev, it's only a tumah till the evening, but the other one is a 7-day tumah. Keman demachta tumah b'chli damya. That's already similar as if it's sitting in a kli. And again, we're saying im tim salomer. If you're going to say that it's sitting in the kli, that's considered at rest. So this also will be considered at rest. Odilmar, maybe tumas michti, or maybe it's all one. It's considered like one unit of tumah, and therefore it's all considered to be floating, and we would be lenient. V'im tim salomer. And if you're going to say keman demachta tumah b'chli damya, that in this case as well, it is as if the tumah is in a kli, and therefore it is considered to be at rest. v'tamei vade, and therefore we consider it to be tamei. So what if you'd have the following case? Sheretz al gabi nevela. Let's say you have a case of a sheretz on top of a nevela, a carcass. So what's the halacha there? When nevela tzafamau and the nevela is floating, what's the halacha? Kevin the tarvayu tumas erev. In that case, they are both tumas erev. Tumas erev inun. They are both tumas erev. So tumas michli. So it's all considered like one unit of tumah. It's considered floating and will be lenient. Dilmar maybe haikazais vaychadasha. These two items, they're metame at different shiurim. One is metame at the shir of a kazayis, the other at the shir of a chadasha, a lentil. So therefore, you'd say it is considered like it's on a separate item and it's considered at rest. And the Gemara continues, sheretz al gabe sheretz mao. So what if you have a sheretz on top of another sheretz? What would we say in that case? Hani vade chad shiurininu. They're certainly metame at the same shir, and therefore maybe it should all be considered one unit. It's all floating. Odilmar maybe came in the mifsiki mehadadilo, since they are in fact separate units, we should consider it at rest. I mean, if you're going to say a sheretz on top of a sheretz, since they're separate units, it's as if it's in a kli and it is considered at rest. So sheretz agabe nevela shenimochama. What if you have a situation of a sheretz on top of an animal carcass, but that animal carcass has already become like liquefied? Kevan de nimocha havale mashke. Since it's been liquefied, it's like a mashke and it's not at rest. Or maybe no, we consider it like an ochel, like a food, and it's considered at rest. And if you're going to say it is considered an ochel, and the sheretz is considered to be at rest in that situation, sheretz agabe shechvas zerama. What if you have sheretz on top of semen? And if you're going to say kemen de misakra, since that semen has left the body, havale ki ochel, it's considered like ochel. So sheretz agabe mechatos. What if you have a situation of the sheretz on top of the mechatos? That is the waters of purification. The waters of purification that are used for tumas meis. So if that's the situation, umechatas tzafin al gabi hamayim, and the mechatas is floating on other water, mahu, what's the halacha? Lo yadin, and the Gemara says we don't know in teku, and the Gemara leaves it as a question. And Rashi explains, sheretz tzaf al gabi mechatas. Let's say the sheretz is floating on the mechatas, the waters of purification, which are floating on other water. Umechatas ovenhein, the mechatas are a thicker kind of water, and they efer parashaben because of the ashes of the para that are mixed within them. So miyavik ochla. So that's the question: is that like an ochel and it's considered at rest? O dilma mashka haver, maybe it's considered liquid. V'havik sheretz tzafus feikotar, and then it's like a floating sheretz and it's tar. Lo yadin and teku. And again, the Gemara says they do not know the answer, and the Gemara leaves it as a question. We will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Samech Dalid Amud Beis.